My 21st birthday was supposed to be the start of my adult life. The trust fund my mom left me before cancer took her when I was 12 would finally be mine. Dad and I had always been close, especially after losing Mom. But ever since he married Jillian 3 years ago, things had been different. She was nice enough when Dad was around, but there was always something cold in her eyes when we were alone. I never suspected my birthday would mark the beginning of 7 years of hell. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from and hit like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by someone in your own family who was supposed to protect you. Growing up in Seattle, my childhood was pretty normal until my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer when I was 11. The following year was a blur of hospital visits, whispered conversations, and watching my beautiful, vibrant mother fade away. Before she passed, she made sure I would be taken care of by setting up a substantial trust fund that I would gain access to when I turned 21. My dad, Thomas, was devastated by her death, but did his best to be both parents to me. He threw himself into his real estate development company during the day, but always made time for me in the evenings and on weekends. We would go fishing, watch baseball games, or just hang out together talking about life. He taught me everything from how to change a tire to how to manage my finances. Despite losing Mom, I felt secure in my relationship with my father. When I was 18 and heading off to college, Dad met Jillian. She was a sales representative at his company, 15 years younger than him, with a son named Kyle, who was 3 years younger than me. Dad fell hard for her charming personality and energetic spirit. I was happy to see him finding joy again after being alone for so many years. Initially, I thought Jillian was great. She was attentive when Dad introduced us, asking questions about my studies and interests. But I noticed something: that Dad seemed blind to the way her demeanor would completely change when he left the room. The warm smile would drop, her eyes would turn cold, and she would find excuses to be elsewhere. I brushed it off, assuming she was just nervous about connecting with her new boyfriend's adult son. When they got married just 6 months after meeting, I was surprised by the speed but supported my dad's decision. I even served as his best man at the small ceremony. Kyle seemed like a decent enough kid, though quiet, and always watching his mother for cues on how to behave. During my college years, I only came home for holidays and some weekends, so I didn't spend much time around Jillian. Dad would visit me at school, often sometimes alone, and sometimes with Jillian. During those years, I noticed Dad starting to change bit by bit. He began canceling our fishing trips. Our conversations became more superficial. Whenever I tried to talk to him about it, Jillian would somehow interrupt or create a distraction. The summer before my 21st birthday, I moved back home temporarily while I applied for jobs and prepared to access my inheritance. The plan was to use some of the money to buy my own place and invest the rest just as Mom had intended. That is when I began noticing odd behaviors from Jillian. Suddenly, after 3 years of barely acknowledging my existence, Jillian seemed intensely interested in my life. She would ask pointed questions about the trust fund, what was the exact amount, who managed it, what my plans were for the money. I kept my answers vague, feeling uncomfortable with her sudden interest. One afternoon, I came home early from a job interview and found Jillian in my room rifling through the drawer where I kept important documents. When confronted, she claimed she was looking for a pen despite there being a cup full of pens on my desk. I started locking my bedroom door after that incident. I also overheard conversations between Jillian and my father about their financial situation. It seemed Jillian had been pushing Dad to restructure the ownership of his company and their assets. Dad was resistant, saying that half of the company rightfully belonged to me as my mother had been his business partner when they started it. The night before my 21st birthday, Dad organized a special dinner at home. He invited a few of my closest friends, my girlfriend Amanda at the time, and of course Jillian and Kyle were there. Dad made a touching speech about how proud Mom would have been of the man I had become. I noticed Jillian drinking more wine than usual, her face becoming increasingly flushed as the evening progressed. As we finished dessert, Jillian suddenly said, "So, Cornelius, now that you will be a rich young man tomorrow, I suppose you will be moving out right away." There was an edge to her voice that made everyone uncomfortable. Dad quickly interjected, "Jillian, Cornelius is welcome to stay as long as he wants. This is his home too." Jillian scoffed, swirling her wine glass. Well, with all that money, why would he want to stay here? I am sure he has big plans. Maybe buy a fancy car. Travel the world with Amanda. Or perhaps just party it away like most kids his age. Amanda squeezed my hand under the table as I replied calmly. Actually, I plan to invest most of it, and use some for a down payment on a small condo. Mom was always smart with money, and she taught me to be the same. Jillian muttered something that sounded like, "Sure she did," before taking another large gulp of wine. The tension was palpable, and my friends started making excuses to leave. After they departed, I helped Dad clean up while Jillian retreated to the living room with another bottle of wine. Kyle had disappeared to his room as he often did during uncomfortable family moments. "Sorry about that," Dad whispered as we loaded the dishwasher. "She is just stressed about work. She did not mean anything by it." I nodded, not wanting to cause any problems on the eve of what should be a happy occasion. "It is fine, Dad. I think I will turn in early. Big day tomorrow." Dad hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of you, son. Your mother would be too." I went to my room, locked the door, and tried to get some sleep. The last thing I heard before drifting off was the sound of arguing downstairs, followed by someone stumbling up the stairs. I woke up on my 21st birthday feeling excited about the future. I had an appointment at 10 a.m. with the trust manager and my mother's lawyer to officially transfer the assets into my name. Dad had promised to be there, but at breakfast he apologized and explained that an emergency had come up at work. "Jillian can drive you," he suggested, but one look at her puffy hangover face told me that was not happening. "It is okay, Dad. I can drive myself." "Will you be home for dinner? I thought we could celebrate." "Absolutely," he promised, kissing my forehead like he used to when I was a kid. I would not miss it for the world. The meeting went smoothly. I signed the papers, received access to the accounts, and listened to advice about responsible management of the assets. My mother had left me approximately $2 million, a sum that felt overwhelming and humbling at the same time. The lawyer gave me a sealed letter from my mom to be opened on this day. I put it in my pocket, wanting to read it in private later. When I arrived home around 1 p.m., there was a police car parked in our driveway. My stomach immediately dropped. Had something happened to Dad? I rushed inside to find 2 officers in our living room, Jillian sobbing dramatically on the couch, and my father standing with his back to the door, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Dad, what is going on?" I asked, my voice catching in my throat. When he turned around, the look on his face made my blood run cold. His eyes, usually warm and loving, were filled with disgust and anger. "Officers, this is him," Jillian choked out between sobs. "This is Cornelius." One of the officers stepped forward. "Cornelius Anderson, we need to speak with you about an alleged incident that occurred last night." "What incident?" I asked, genuinely confused. The officer glanced at his notepad. "Mrs. Anderson has filed a complaint stating that you sexually assaulted her last night when she came to your room to wish you happy birthday." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? That is absolutely not true. She never came to my room last night. I locked my door and went straight to sleep." "He is lying." Jillian wailed, her face buried in her hands. "I just wanted to be nice to him, to try one more time to connect, and he attacked me when I went to his room." For the first time, I noticed the bruise on her cheek and the torn sleeve of her blouse. "Dad," I turned to him desperately. "You know this is not true. You know me." The look he gave me will haunt me forever. The Cornelius I thought I knew would never do something like this. But the evidence. Jillian has bruises. The doctor confirmed she was assaulted. "What doctor?" "When this is insane, I never touched her." I was shouting now, panic rising in my chest. "Sir, we need you to come down to the station to answer some questions," the officer said firmly. "Dad, please," I begged, tears forming in my eyes. "This is a lie. She is making this up. You have to believe me." My father looked away. "I cannot even look at you right now. Go with the officers. I have called a lawyer for you, but after this, you are not welcome in this house anymore." I was in shock as the officers escorted me out. As we passed Jillian, I saw something in her eyes that chilled me to the bone, a flash of triumph quickly hidden behind more crocodile tears. At the police station, I answered questions for hours, maintaining my innocence. The lawyer Dad sent was professional but cold, treating me like he had already decided I was guilty. I learned that Jillian claimed I had grabbed her, torn her clothing, and struck her when she resisted. There were no witnesses, no physical evidence beyond her self-reported injuries, and my door had indeed been locked from the inside all night, which supported my story. After a grueling interrogation, I was released pending further investigation. When I tried to go home, I found my belongings packed in suitcases on the front porch. Dad refused to come to the door. Instead, he sent a text message that read, "I have transferred enough money for a hotel and first month's rent somewhere. Do not contact me or come near this house or Jillian again. I cannot believe you would betray my trust like this." I sat in my car outside my childhood home reading and rereading that message through tears of confusion and betrayal. How could my father, who had known me my entire life, believe I was capable of such a horrible act? The sealed letter from my mother still sat unopened in my pocket. With shaking hands, I finally opened it. "My dearest Cornelius," it began, "if you are reading this, you have reached your 21st birthday, and I have been gone for 9 years. I am so proud of the man you have surely become. Remember that no matter what life throws at you, you have the strength and integrity that comes from being deeply loved. The money I leave you is important, but it is not as important as knowing your own worth. Trust yourself, even when others might not. All my love always, Mom." Those words written so long ago felt like they were meant precisely for this moment. With tears streaming down my face, I started my car and drove away from the only home I had ever known, not knowing if I would ever be welcome there again. The next few months were the darkest of my life. I found a small apartment in a neighboring city, using the money Dad had transferred to me. The investigation into Jillian's accusations continued, but without evidence, it stalled. No charges were filed, but the damage to my relationship with my father was catastrophic. I tried calling, texting, and emailing him countless times, but he either ignored me or responded with short, cold messages telling me to stay away. I even drove by the house a few times, hoping to catch him outside so we could talk, but I only ever saw Jillian, who would immediately go inside if she spotted my car. The few mutual friends I shared with Dad told me he truly believed Jillian's story. She had apparently been painting herself as a stepmother who had only ever tried to connect with her troubled stepson only to be violently rejected. Some friends stood by me, but others distanced themselves, unwilling to take sides in such an ugly situation. Thankfully, I had my mother's inheritance to fall back on. I found a job at a small financial planning firm, determined to build my own life, despite the false accusations hanging over me. I paid for a private investigator to look into Jillian's background, hoping to find something that would prove her dishonesty, but he turned up little of value. She had been married twice before meeting my father, both marriages ending in messy divorces with financial settlements in her favor, but nothing that definitively proved she was lying about me. The hardest part was knowing my father, my hero, my role model, the man who had raised me with love and taught me right from wrong, believed I was capable of assaulting a woman. Each night I would fall asleep, wondering what I could have done differently, what evidence I could find to prove my innocence, and whether I would ever have my father back in my life. Amanda, my girlfriend at the time, stood by me initially, but eventually the stress of the situation took its toll on our relationship. 6 months after the accusation, she tearfully told me she could not handle it anymore. The depression I had fallen into, the obsession with clearing my name, and the cloud of suspicion that followed me everywhere. I did not blame her. I was not the same person anymore. The confident, optimistic young man had been replaced by someone suspicious, guarded, and deeply wounded. I started seeing a therapist, trying to process the trauma of being falsely accused and abandoned by my father. It helped, but the hole in my heart remained. As the first year passed, I threw myself into my career, working long hours and earning a reputation as someone dedicated and detail-oriented. I made new friends who knew nothing about my past, creating a separate life where I was not that guy accused of assault, but just Cornelius, the financial advisor with a knack for helping people plan their futures. I dated occasionally, but I found it hard to open up to anyone. How do you tell someone you are getting to know that your stepmother falsely accused you of assault, and your father disowned you. It was not exactly casual dinner conversation. Most relationships fizzled out before they got serious as I maintained emotional walls to protect myself from further pain. By the 5-year mark, I had established myself professionally. I had been promoted several times and was now managing my own team at a larger financial firm. I had saved enough to buy a small but nice condo in the city, and I had a small circle of close friends who knew bits and pieces of my story and supported me unconditionally. I still thought about my father every day, wondering how he was doing, if he ever doubted Jillian's story, if he ever missed me as much as I missed him. I had stopped trying to contact him after the first 2 years, respecting his wish for no communication, though it broke my heart to do so. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday in autumn, 5 years after the accusation, something unexpected happened. I was having lunch at a cafe near my office when someone called my name. I looked up to see Maria, our former housekeeper who had worked for us since I was a child, but had mysteriously disappeared right after the incident with Jillian. "Cornelius, is that really you?" she asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "Maria, yes, it is me. Please sit down." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "What happened to you? You just disappeared." Maria glanced around nervously before sitting down. "I was fired. The day after your birthday. Mrs. Jillian said they no longer needed my services." Just like that. After all those years, Maria lowered her voice. "No, not just like that. I think she fired me because of what I saw." My heart began racing. "What do you mean? What did you see?" "The night before your birthday, after everyone went to bed, I was finishing up some laundry in the utility room next to the kitchen. I heard Mrs. Jillian come downstairs. She was talking on the phone with someone, saying that tomorrow everything would be taken care of, and that she would make sure you never got your hands on any of the family money. I felt like I could not breathe. What else, Maria? Please, this is important." Then the next morning, before anyone else was awake, I saw her in the bathroom. She was using makeup to create a bruise on her face, and she tore her own blouse. When she saw me watching, she threatened me. Said if I ever told anyone what I saw, she would accuse me of stealing and make sure I never worked again in the city. I have 3 children, Cornelius. I could not risk it, but I have felt terrible about it every day since then. My hands were shaking as I processed this information. After 5 years, here was the first piece of real evidence that Jillian had manufactured the whole accusation. "Maria, would you be willing to make a statement about what you saw? I could hire a lawyer to take your deposition." She hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. "I do not know. I am still afraid of what she might do." "I understand. Let me give you my contact information. If you change your mind, please call me. And thank you for telling me this now. You have no idea what it means to me." After Maria left, I sat in that cafe for another hour, my mind racing with possibilities. This was the break I had been waiting for, but I knew it might not be enough. Maria was scared and might not be willing to go on record. I needed more evidence. Over the next few months, I hired a new private investigator who specialized in complex family cases. We discovered that Jillian's son Kyle, now in his early 20s, was having financial troubles. He had dropped out of college and was working odd jobs while accumulating significant debt. This gave me an idea. Without revealing my identity, I approached Kyle about a job opportunity at my firm. He did not recognize me. We had never spent much time together, and I had changed significantly in the years since we had last seen each other. I hired him for an entry-level position and spent time mentoring him, slowly building trust. After several months of working together, I finally revealed who I was. The color drained from Kyle's face when he realized his boss was the stepbrother his mother had accused of assault. To my surprise, he did not quit on the spot. "I have wondered what happened to you," he said quietly. "Mom never talks about it, and your dad. He is not the same person anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the mention of my father. Kyle sighed deeply. "He is distant, sad all the time, and he and Mom fight constantly about money. The company is not doing well, and she keeps pressuring him to sell it." Over the following weeks, Kyle and I continued to talk. Gradually, he confessed that he had never believed his mother's accusations against me. He had suspected she was lying, but had been too afraid to speak up as a teenager dependent on her. I found something once, he admitted one evening after we had stayed late at the office. About a year after you left. It was a recording on Mom's phone. She was talking to her friend about how she had taken care of the trust fund problem and how your father would never find out the truth because he was too blinded by love to see what she was really like. My heart pounded. Do you still have access to this recording? No, but... Kyle hesitated. I could get more evidence. She still talks about it sometimes when she is drunk, brags about how clever she was. I could record her. I have wanted to tell your dad for years, but I was too scared of what she would do to me. With Kyle's help over the next year, we gathered a substantial amount of evidence. Text messages where Jillian discussed her plans with a friend. A recording where she drunkenly admitted to the false accusation. Financial records showing how she had systematically drained my father's accounts after I was gone. And finally, Kyle's own sworn statement about what he had witnessed over the years. 7 years after the false accusation that destroyed my relationship with my father, I felt ready to confront him with the truth. I arranged to meet him at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I arrived early, my stomach in knots, the folder of evidence clutched tightly in my hands. When my father walked in, I barely recognized him. His hair had turned completely gray, deep lines etched his face, and he moved like a man carrying a heavy burden. When he saw me, he stopped, uncertainty, and a flash of old pain crossing his features. Cornelius, he said my name, like a question. Thank you for coming, Dad. I replied, my voice cracking slightly on the word, Dad. It had been so long since I had said it aloud. He sat down across from me, his hands fidgeting with a napkin. Your message said it was important, that you had something I needed to see. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Before I show you anything, I want you to know that I never touched Jillian. Not that night, not ever. I would never do what she accused me of. I need you to know that I have been telling the truth all along. My father closed his eyes briefly, pain evident on his face. Cornelius, I do not know if I can go through this again. The evidence was manufactured. I interrupted, opening the folder, and I can prove it. For the next hour, I presented everything we had gathered, the statements from Maria and Kyle, the recordings of Jillian, the financial records showing her true motivations. With each piece of evidence, my father seemed to physically age, his shoulders slumping further, his expression growing more horrified. When I finished, he sat in silence for several long minutes. Then, to my shock, he began to weep. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. People at nearby tables looked over in concern, but I could only watch my own eyes filling with tears. I failed you, he finally choked out. I failed you so completely, my own son. How could I have believed her over you? How could I have been so blind? I reached across the table and took his hand. She was very convincing, Dad. She planned it carefully. She took advantage of your trust. He shook his head. That is no excuse. I should have known you better. I should have trusted the son I raised. Can you ever forgive me? The question hung between us, loaded with 7 years of pain, loss, and separation. Could I forgive him? Could we ever repair what had been broken? I think we can try, I said finally. It will take time. We both have a lot of healing to do. Dad squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with determination despite the tears. I will make this right, Cornelius. I promise you. Starting with Jillian. The confrontation with Jillian happened the very next day. My father invited me to the house when he knew she would be there. Walking through the front door for the first time in 7 years felt surreal. The house looked mostly the same, though there were no photos of me anywhere to be seen. Jillian's face when she saw me enter the living room behind my father was a picture of shock, quickly masked by outrage. What is he doing here? Thomas, how could you bring him into our home after what he did to me? My father's voice was calm but ice cold. Sit down, Jillian. We need to talk. I will not sit in the same room as him. Have you forgotten what happened? Have you forgotten how he attacked me? That never happened, and you know it, my father replied, placing the folder of evidence on the coffee table. What did happen is that you lied to me. You manufactured evidence. You falsely accused my son of a horrible crime to get him out of the way so you could control my assets. And I was fool enough to believe you." The color drained from Jillian's face as she saw Kyle's name on one of the statements visible in the open folder. "Kyle, what does he have to do with this? What lies has Cornelius been telling you?" "No lies," Kyle said, stepping out from the kitchen where he had been waiting. "Just the truth, Mom, about everything I have seen and heard over the years. About how you bragged to your friends about getting rid of Cornelius. What followed was one of the most intense hours of my life." Jillian cycled through denial, outrage, tears, and finally, when confronted with the recording of her own voice, a chilling calm. "Fine," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "You want the truth." "Yes, I set him up. I needed him gone. He was standing in the way of our future, Thomas. That trust fund should have been for our family, not just for him. Everything I did was for us." "There is no us anymore," my father replied. "I have already spoken to a lawyer. Divorce papers will be served tomorrow, and we will be going to the police with this evidence. What you did was criminal." Jillian's face contorted with rage. "You will regret this. Both of you," she spat, grabbing her purse and storming out of the house. The aftermath was messy but necessary. Jillian was charged with filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted fraud. She eventually agreed to a plea deal to avoid jail time, but her reputation was ruined. The divorce proceedings revealed she had been systematically transferring my father's assets to accounts in her name, preparing for an eventual split where she would take everything. Kyle, to his credit, testified against his mother. It was not an easy choice for him, but he told me he needed to do what was right, even if it meant breaking with the person who raised him. I made sure he kept his job at my firm, impressed by his integrity despite his upbringing. Rebuilding my relationship with my father took time. We started with weekly dinners, awkward at first, filled with careful conversation and the weight of all we had lost. We both began seeing a family therapist, working through the layers of hurt, betrayal, and misunderstanding. There were setbacks, times when the pain felt too raw, when forgiveness seemed impossible, but there were breakthroughs too. The first time we went fishing together again. The night Dad showed me, he had put all the old family photos back up, including a whole wall dedicated to pictures of me with my mother. The day he asked me to consider coming back to work at the family company, which was struggling to recover from years of Jillian's financial manipulation. 3 years after our reconciliation, I finally agreed to join the company. I brought my financial expertise, modernized our operations, and together, Dad and I rebuilt what had nearly been destroyed. The company began to thrive again, and so did our relationship. On a personal level, I found healing too. I met Jessica, a kind and understanding woman who patiently helped me lower the walls I had built around my heart. She listened to my full story without judgment and stood by me through the difficult days of court appearances and legal battles with Jillian. Now, 10 years after that fateful 21st birthday, I can look back and see how far I have come. The false accusation that nearly destroyed me ultimately led me to build a stronger, more resilient version of myself. I discovered that I could stand on my own, create success independently, and eventually find my way back to family and love. Dad and I run the company as equal partners now. He is dating again, a lovely widow he met at a business conference, who brings out his smile in a way I had not seen since my mother was alive. Jessica and I are engaged, planning a small wedding for next spring. Kyle has become something of a brother to me, having completely cut ties with his mother after witnessing the full extent of her deception. As for Jillian, I heard she moved across the country after the legal proceedings concluded. I do not waste energy hating her anymore. That would only give her continued power over my life, and she has taken enough already. Sometimes I think about the letter my mother left me, how she somehow knew I would need her words of encouragement and wisdom on my 21st birthday, though she could never have imagined the circumstances. Trust yourself, even when others might not. Those words carried me through the darkest times. The journey from betrayal to healing taught me that while we cannot control what happens to us, or even what others believe about us, we can control how we respond. I chose to fight for the truth without becoming bitter. I chose to forgive my father without forgetting the lesson. I chose to build a life that honors my mother's memory and the values she instilled in me. Life is too short to hold on to anger, but it is also too precious to spend with people who do not believe in you when it matters most. Sometimes the family we rebuild after tragedy is stronger than the one we lost. And sometimes the truth takes the long way home, but it always arrives eventually. Have you ever been falsely accused of something and had to fight to clear your name? Or have you had to forgive someone who should have believed in you but did not? Share your story in the comments below. Do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that the truth always comes to light, eventually. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that no matter what challenges you are facing, time reveals all truths to those patient enough to wait for them.